Thank you. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, Especially, I would like to address respected panelists who are specialists and experts in their own respective domains, the invited discussants, and my dear participants who are a batch of young students and young activists and researchers from various parts of Assam. Let me start with a warm welcome to this evening of an online forum where we are going to discuss a very important and very pertinent dimension, very pertinent aspect of what we call water management and in a broader sense, water governance. I have already stated the broad objective and the background in the concept note, which you must have gone through. But just to give you a sense of what we are going to deal with and the overall context, I will run you through an array of pictures, and I will ask you just to look at these pictures and think in yourself what it means to you, because all these photographs that I'm going to show you are centering around the theme which we call women and water. In a broader sense, which later on Gita Madam will explain to you, gender and water, right? So these are photographs that I have acquired from my own archive, which have been snapped in various times, maybe in last 10, 15 years. And I think they are enough to give you a visual context of what it means when we say gender and water, women and water, and why it is important to talk about gender in water management. I hope all these pictures, each of these pictures tells you a story, tells us a story of its own from various situations, from various communities, from various, socio-ecological context. And everywhere you will see women is at the center of water use and management, but not around control. This is all about water, and this is all about the role of women, and which we don't understand, and neither we feel unless we start consciously thinking about it, because it's so natural and it's so common in our societies. But when you really think seriously, you see that it is actually the woman who should be at the center of everything that we call water management. Now, especially for, before explaining this slide, I'm giving you another, a clarification that I have already given, that this webinar is confined to a select group because the purpose is not to sensitize people. The purpose is not actually to any public education or awareness. Rather, the purpose is to put on the table some of the important issues around the theme, and then pick up a couple of those issues as input for the consideration of the state government of Assam, because that is what we are being asked to do actually, and we have been doing for some time. But there's a small group of people who are young people who are about 25 of them. Uh, they have been working with us on another assignment. They are working on documenting different rivers and river stories from all over Assam, where we have asked them to also to look at the gender perspective along with many other issues around. So we invited them to attend this webinar, and we promised them that this is going to be very educative for them, and they will get some kind of a gender orientation. And therefore, although we are not starting from the scratch, but maybe we can just rephrase them, just for their sake. We can tell a few things about what we mean by water governance. So when you say water governance, actually, so water governance is a very broad term, which includes many aspects of our life and society, like social, economic, ecological, political, and administrative system. And all these systems together influence the use of water, the control of water, and the management of water. So broadly, when we say water governance, three things come to our mind. Number one, the laws and acts, including rules and sub-rules and by-rules, which emerge out of the Constitution of India. And at different times, governments, state and central governments keep on promulgating different kind of laws and acts and rules. Those are there because that guide and that impose different kind of practices and different kind of restriction for using water, and also provide guidelines for practice by different kind of stakeholders. Number two, the institutions. There are many institutions. If you think of the nation as a whole, we have the Ministry of Water Resources, which is now called Jal Shakti. And then under Jal Shakti, there are two different ministries, you know that. And there are many other institutes that help this ministry in governing the water sector. For example, the Surface Water Commission, and the many other research institutes. Come to the states level of Assam, you have the Department of Water Resources at state governments level, and then maybe a couple of research institutions related to government. Then other we have departments of public health, Department of Irrigation. We have an authority for disaster management, which are all related to, in one or the other way, related to water. And water governance can be both formal and informal. So it should be clear from the very beginning that we are not only talking about the government. So because laws and acts and rules are there both at the formal level, informal level at the community level. Because there are many communities, for example, many tribal societies in Northeast who practice their own rules, own regulations, own customary laws. And there are couple of states where actually the customary laws way heavier than the constitutional laws. So it's very important to understand, know the context of customary life of these groups, just to understand how they deal with water at the daily and maybe at the institution or at community or family level. And then comes a group of guidelines which we call policy. So basically, laws, acts, policy, institution, these are the three important pillars of water governance. And the key concerns are, for water governance or water governance, people are, this is a universal concern. We know that water is a scarce resource. This is not only true for the entire world or maybe for, certain parts of India. It's no longer true. Even for a place like Northeast India and Assam, water is becoming scarce and scarce because there are many places. There are more and more number of emerging, situations where you know that even Assam right now, Assam is in the middle of a deep water crisis, drought-like situations. Because our entire rainfall and water storages are unequal in their geographical and temporal distribution. And we often face a very kind of a too little and too much of water situation in central and lower Assam right now, there is a water crisis situation, but for last 2-3 days, a couple of districts in Dhemaji and other places are suffering from floods. So this is a very normal situation here because of the monsoon, the vagaries and variability of monsoons, etc. So therefore, there's a need that water has to be managed properly for both human and environmental well-being. And as I said, there are, if we unpack the concept of water governance further, we see that if we analyze, there are political aspects, there are economic aspects, environmental, ecological aspects, social, including cultural, and there is technological aspect, which also includes science and science. So it's a science and technological aspects of governance. So everything together, makes water governance. So whenever it comes to governance, any kind of governance, or maybe water management, maybe any kind of management of any natural resources, we need to ask some questions, which are basic questions. Of course, these are not comprehensive, but these are fundamental questions. So you need to ask who gets water, who doesn't get water, how does one get water, how much water does one get, what kind of water does one get, what quality of water, when, where, at what price or cost, what are one's right to get water, what are the provisions through which one gets water, who manages water. For example, like preservation, conservation, protection, utilization, distribution, allocation of water and water bodies. Who does this? How are our water bodies and any kind of water storages managed and governed? For example, our rivers, our wetlands, which are surface water resources, dams, which are examples of storages, and then aquifers, which means groundwater. What are the principles and rules of management that the government or maybe a community has ascribed to itself? Who forms the rules and laws? Who enforces rules and laws? How can people ensure their legal right to get water and water-related services from the state? So these were general basic questions, and the same questions and even more important questions could be asked and should be asked when it comes to the gender aspect of water. About I mean, it will be elaborated further by Gitarani Bhattacharya later on. But let me just tell you that these are general questions that we can ask ourselves, or we can ask during any point of time during today's discussion also. What is the role of women in water management at household and community levels? How does the prevailing water management regime impact women? In what way? In how many different ways? Because we know that both men and women are differentially impacted by water management. Is gender equity and gender justice addressed in existing? Yes or no? If yes, how? If no, why? How can we mainstream gender perspectives into water governance? So these, I think, could be the guiding questions for today's discussion also. And therefore, the objectives that we will set out to achieve in this webinar are, I'm reiterating because I have already stated this. Number one, we want to identify the core issues that need to be addressed to understand the many dimensions of women's role and contribution to water management, and the impact of the hydrosocial regime on women. The hydrosocial regime is a kind of a new and emerging term. It's a very beautiful term. It's a very inclusive term. Everything that we can think about, linking society and the hydro sector means water, right? Number two, we would like to highlight those factors which are emerging out of the recent environmental and socio-economic drivers. We can discuss later on what are these drivers that have increased vulnerability of women to water-related stresses. Women have always been more vulnerable in many cases than men to water-related stresses. But because of very recent changes and drivers that have swept us, for example, we can think of the pandemic, we can think of the overall livelihood crisis, especially in our rural areas of India and as well as in Assam. We can think about the overall health insecurity, food insecurity, and how all these newly emerging factors have, we call nexus to it, in nexus with the already, prevailing water-induced vulnerabilities of women, how the situation has become even worse. Number three, we want to provide recommendations from a gender outlook, which we would like to be included and mainstream in the existing and future water governance policies. So let me, at this, this is the right time to tell you that right now we do not have any policy for the state of Assam on water. So Assam doesn't have a water policy. The story goes like that. In 2002, our first national water policy came in 1987, which was revised in 2002. And the 2002 water policy made it compulsory for each state government to frame their own state level water policies. So therefore, there was an attempt in Assam in 2000, starting from 2005 and 6 itself, to formulate a water policy. But unfortunately, it was formulated, but it was left in the draft state. It was never finalized, or it was not adopted or accepted by the government. There were many reasons. I'll not go into all those factors right now. But the matter of the fact is that we do not have a water policy, and that is what we have been advocating for a long time. I've been personally doing it. From Aaranyak, we have been doing it, and a couple of other individuals and organizations. Whenever we get an opportunity, we have been stretching on the need of having a water policy. And otherwise, Assam will be left maybe as one of those very few states that has still, from 2002 to 2021, see, for last 20 years, we have not been able to manage or give ourselves a water policy, which I don't think a matter, it's a matter to be proud of. So all this, this program is part of a larger advocacy program through which we are trying to, we are trying to influence government policymakers to adopt one state level water policy. So therefore, whenever they does that, we would like them to include the most important gender issues, because if you go back to the 2007 draft policy or the latest national water policy of 2012, you will not get any mention of gender consideration. This is what noting. So there's almost nothing. And this has happened because the policymakers themselves probably were not sensitized, or they were unaware about this very important gender dimensions. And therefore, this is a very important issue before us, because this is one larger goal of this whole program. And then finally, suggest a road ahead to engage with public policymakers for promoting a gender-sensitive water discourse in this state. I now realize that there are 4 objectives, and it may not be possible in a single webinar to cover that kind of a very large ground. But whatever we can do, I think will be good enough for this evening. And if needed, we may have to reconvene this gathering or recongregate in future to complete the job. So therefore, with this kind of small introduction to the program, I now conclude. And the next program is an introduction to the panelists, respected panelists. I now request Alodika Sinha to introduce our panelists to the audience.
Thank you, Parthada, and a very good evening to everyone. It's a great pleasure to introduce today's panelists. I start with Srimati Gitarani Bhattacharya, who heads the program in Assam for Best Practices Foundation based in Bangalore. She has been associated with the organization since 2019. And prior to this, she worked with the Mahila Samakhya program in Assam under MHRD Government of India, which focuses on empowerment of rural women and girls through education initiatives since 1997. Besides, she holds a number of positions as an advisor in different organizations of Assam. Over the past 20 years, she has been directly associated with the work in the field of gender and development, especially building rural women's collectives for promoting their empowerment process. She is recognized as a resource person and consultant by different government and non-government organizations, as well as different academic institutions for various gender issues, such as gender-based violences, adolescent issues, especially of girl education and child rights, societal evils like witch hunting, women and water governments, among others. She has successfully completed many collaborative research projects in the similar line. She has completed her post-graduation in geography from Cotton College under Guwahati University in the year 1999. Welcome on board, ma'am. Moving on, I introduce our next panelist today, who is Srimati.
91, not 99, 91. Sorry, if it is
1991. Sorry for the glitch, ma'am. Yeah, so she has completed her post-graduation in 1991. I just rectified myself. Welcome on board, ma'am. And moving on, I introduced my next panelist, Srimati Preeti Madan, ma'am, who has joined the Indian Economic Service back in 1981 and served at various capacities in the state and the central governments and the union governments for 37 long years. She is a former principal economic advisor for the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, Government of India. She has received her postgraduate diploma in management from the University of Concordia in Montreal, Canada. Besides holding various cadre posts of the Indian Economic Service, she has served as a deputy secretary in the Ministry of Textiles, director in the Department of Economic Affairs, joint secretary in the Ministries of Women and Child Development and Minority Affairs, and as a member secretary of the National Commission for Women during her deputation tenure. She worked at the capacity of additional secretary in the National Commission for Women. Madam Madan has also co-chaired the task force on Make in India and transfer of technology for the Mumbai-Ahmedabad high-speed railway project. Madam Madan is also a former secretary, as I mentioned. While discharging her responsibilities during all these years, she became closely associated with the issues that are faced by women, and she is now an honorary member of the India Water Partnership. We are very delighted to have you in the panel today, ma'am. Moving on, I introduced our next panelist, who is Srimati Kankanika Anyo, who is a water policy professional based in Guwahati. She is currently working as a consultant for water governance project. Until November 2020, she was working with an environmental public policy research institution in Delhi called Council on Energy, Environment and Water, and has gained experience in research, program and donor management. She has contributed to many research projects and published several journal articles and reports, and also opinion pieces. She has worked on water governance issues across wastewater, irrigation, water institutions, urban water, and energy nexus issues. Srimati Kankanika is passionate about the cause of women at work and has been a co-chair for institutional initiative at CEEW called Women in Sustainability to support women in the workplace. We are glad that you are here with us today, Srimati Nyo. Moving on, I introduce Dr. Arpita Das, who is a researcher, public policy, and a governance professional, and is currently an advisor with the New Zealand Public Service Commission in Wellington, New Zealand. She has a vast experience in different sectors, ranging from government, industries, not-for-profits, academia across Asia Pacific. Her areas of expertise include gender, sustainability, disaster risk reduction, and livelihoods. She has completed her PhD on social work from the renowned Tata Institute of Social Science in Mumbai, and her doctoral research focused on indigenous communities living with floods in the state of Assam. She has published extensively, and some of the noteworthy publications include in the British Journal of Social Work, where she also served as one of the reviewers. Dr. Das is a trustee for Trade Aid Wellington and a firm believer in fair trade. We're delighted to have you, Dr. Das, as our panelist. Moving on, I take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Swapnali Gogoi, who is presently the head of the Geography Department of the North Lakhimpur College in Assam. She completed her master's in the subject of geography from Guwahati University and a subsequent PhD degree from Rajiv Gandhi University. Her PhD thesis title is Fluvial Geomorphology with special reference to Jayadhol River. She also coordinates the disaster management cell of North Lakhimpur College, and she has published books on river study, fluvial geomorphology. She has been an esteemed speaker in many national and international seminars. She says that she observes the riverine people and the disaster-affected communities from close quarters with special interest on the condition of women. Welcome on board, ma'am. Now I move on to Dr. Sanchita Borua, who currently works as an associate professor and heads the Department of Zoology in DHSK College in Dibrugarh. She is a specialist on ecohydrology with a focus on riverine and wetland ecology and management. She is a postdoctorate fellow in ecohydrology from School of Biological and Environmental Sciences, University of Stirling, based in Scotland, UK. She has been working on the Brahmaputra river system for the last 25 years and has worked in a number of national and international projects on the Brahmaputra river. Welcome, ma'am. Now I move on to introducing Dr. Veena Kanduri, who is currently the Executive Secretary Country Coordinator of India Water Partnership. Dr. Veena Kanduri is a PhD in Environmental Biology from the renowned Forest Research Institute, Dehradun. She has a vast experience of more than 32 years in project appraisal, implementation, monitoring of projects in different sectors, such as water, livelihood and food security, economic and social development, women development, microfinance, rural and urban sanitation, water and natural resource management, climate change, forestry, and environmental sector. She has supported the International Fund for Agricultural Development in Chhattisgarh Rural Livelihood Project in the capacity of Deputy Team Leader and Gender Expert. She was a gender and SHG expert in the World Bank Assisted Rural Women Development and Empowerment Project during the tenure from 1999 to 2005. She represented India as a regional council member of Global Water Partnership South Asia from 2006 to 2010 and provided technical support to the GWP SAS for various regional programs. Welcome on board, ma'am. With this, I complete the list of today's panelists, and I also would like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Parthasarathi Das, who is a senior scientist with Aaranyak. Well, he wears many caps at Aaranyak. He's also our organizing secretary and heads the division of water, climate, and hazard divisions. So with this, I hand it over to Dr. Parthasarathi Das.
Thank you, Alolika. Special thanks for including me in the introduction. Otherwise, people who would not have known who I am actually. Anyway, thank you very much. So I actually forgot to introduce myself.
I thought it's a women panel and you won't have much opportunity to talk.
You're right. Thanks for the consideration. So we will now have the main theme presentation from Srimati Geeta Rani Bhattacharya. Can I request Geeta Madam to deliver her lecture.
Thank you, Partha. And I would like to uh, greet and offer my respect to all the panelists and other participants here in this webinar. And I must say, it is it's a time appropriate and it's a very important topic which has been bringing to for the discussion today, because the now including Assam, including India, across the whole world is now is facing the disaster in the through the pandemic, or now it's a different kind of situation the people have been passing through, and where there are very lots of lived examples are there in the field reality, the in the situation of women has gone. It's a very critical situation. It is piling over the constraint to piling over their their sufferings from the different problems in the society, because they are the most sufferer in the society. That's why we are sitting here to discuss the concept of gender as well as the gender issues around the women and water in context of especially in Assam. I would like to start that basically gender equity is the foremost and primary human right. We must consider it. And with this concern, the woman empowerment, woman and man, yeah. If in terms of equality, it's the basically woman should have they have to the mm, right to lead the live in the freedom and in dignity. And it empowered society, empowered, and if the empowered man and woman, if in the society where the man and woman both are empowered, again its impact goes, the positive impact goes to the family, then the society. So it's a very important to already lots of concerns the Dr. Partho has mentioned in his inaugural when speech, and but irony is that it is not that yeah there if I will say that this is a gender concept is new, the society as well as the government machinery is not considering, not thinking about it, then it is many a time people will hit back to us. But irony is that, yeah, it is basically, if we say that it is in our development process, in our development concern, development machinery, basically we always consider the planning commission is the main heart of the policy maker and planning for the development of the country. And if we see that in the 8th plan in 1992, it was it is a huge paradigm shift in terms of our development process. Because before that, till the 7th plan, all the women concerns, women development issues, women development policy schemes are all mostly uh, in the where the uh, welfare approach. But for the first time in 1992, I mean in the age plan, the empowerment approach has been had been introduced in our planning process. But there was a mismatching is there. Why? At the policy level, some policy level, policy makers to from the policy makers to the implementing agency as well as the receivers, as well as the receivers. This gender sensitivity, the gender concerns, it is not in place. We are our this patriarchal notion, patriarchal attitude, patriarchal practices are so mm, it is blending, it's embedded in our day-to-day practice, so that at the policy level, it is though it has included and formally, but when it comes to the field, it goes other way. Basically, I would like to submit here that women, while it is, I will come to the water governance first, but it's a main grounding on main gender concerns. Regarding the gender concerns, I would like to say that in any case, rather considering women as an agency. Basically, women agencies are never considered. They are not being considered as a solution in the part of the solution giver, as in the part of the decision maker, in the part of the as a part of the development process. That is the main gap I uh, I have seen in the process. Because if because there are in papers lots of things are there, because the sensitivity and our social structures are not being changed, and our belief system has it's embedded so strongly with the patriarchal values, so it goes that way. And many a time it's a very basic things, but it's a very basic things. And I would also like that I here I'm not as saying as an academician or as a thing, but as from my field level experience I would like to share. Because it's a very basic point, that the difference between gender and sex, it's not it's in one terms, it is I think uh, uh, before 30 years or 20, maybe 20 years, it is a issue, it is a topic which has to very systematically, very strongly to need to bring to the discussion in kind of this forum, and the kind of this discussion. But nowadays it's a common it's a common thing which most of the people know it. But when it goes to the implementing situation, when it goes to the community level, it still women are seen as a sex object. Because the sex and gender difference between sex and gender is yet to yet to understand by the community, by the different level of at the organized sector, in the formal sector, as well as the informal sector too. Uh, so that main always the main issues, main problem I seen, that they never considered women as an agency. The women's agencies are not considered there. Because if I will come to the women and water concern, I see we must say that women's presence in water related activities is very high. Patra has very clearly shown the pictures, different pictures in the normal time, as well as during the disaster or the crisis period too. But although the woman's presence is very high, say from the household level work, to the managing the household level works, from the as well as to manage the cattle, to from the caregiving to the many way. It's a woman's presence is very high, but but thing is that uh, when the governance point is coming, when the community level or family level governance points are coming, then women are not considered. the, because thing is that as their presence is very high, that it their presence gives also them the experience, the knowledge, where the regarding the every aspects, quality of availability, quality, and when the crisis come, all the knowledge they have. But although they are having this, but in the formal, in the in practical, when the to deal with those issues, when the situation come, then hardly the women are being invited. Here here I will just want to flag one recent experience, because I had got opportunity to involve in a study conducted by Oxfam, basically gender assessment during the disaster basically. um, and in the during FGD, I just want to with a man, with the man, I just want to understand the women are the women participate in the community level or public meetings and all. Then a man straightly, a man, I quote, I'm going to quote his language. No. We never expect women in our traditional forum, traditional committee. We never expect traditional committee. We never expect women to be there. One, yeah, in the government committee, since it is mandatory, three or two or four, any committee, any government committee, it has made mandatory. So there are women, but they didn't have any role to play. And third point, he said that, yeah, women are being invited and we allowed. That is also a contradictory, very uh,
Mhm.
this
Now,
disturbing sentence. We allowed them to participate in very big public meeting, big political meetings, and etc. So here three points he said. One is, in the traditional forum we never expect. So it is never expect. In the government formed committee, as mandatory they are there, but their role is very, it's not at all, they have nothing to do exactly here. The participants and language I am saying. So what reflects through this? Because those the patriarchal mindset, because as well they don't have any role in the process of decision making in the traditionally. Secondly, when the government has yeah, it is a strategically government has made there's a policy to include women, to give the space to see. But until and unless the a social mindset, or whom we included in the committee, if we'll not carefully think or carefully address, then their role is, because they are thinking, the because women never oppose any point where the man against the man's decision. So out of 10, if the 7 men are there, a 10 members committee, in the 7 members, what 7 members will think, the woman automatically agree upon. That is again that our traditional notions. So it implies, because it all those questions were discussed in terms of disaster management committees the government has formed. Our policy has allowed disaster management committees and lots other. So as the study was related to disaster, so in terms of that we had discussed, and this was the situation reflect, and it is only just 6 months before. So yeah, there may be there may be a different situation in some pockets, but larger picture is like that. Larger picture is like that. The women are still considered as a, in the different space, different forum, women's presence considered as a, hardly as a tokenism kind of thing. Never, but on our, still our salients are the until and unless if the women's not considered as a agencies, then never be the gender equality. That means the human rights will not, we are not going to eat, because thing is that there's always now what until and otherwise always in terms of initiating the empowerment project or any, you know, always women are looking at the victim, as a victim, as a um, kind of uh, sympathetically, not sympathetically consider as a, only as a victim, so that always they are not considered as a part of sense maker, only as a receiver. So having said that, in the when so that's why Partho also mentioned that when we are going to have the any implement or any formulate any scheme or any activity we plan in a formal or informal sector, in community level also lots of, there are examples, the community themselves, they are managing the what whole water supply or water management, they have their own system. So say for example Dong is a very good example, but in the Dong committee, in the Dong committee never ever have any woman representation. In the Dong committee, while it was asked when I met, and from the different people also asked, they clearly say that Dong committee is only to mean the because the woman cannot drag the this log and all this. It's a very physical labor, hard physical labor kind of things is involving, so that we are not consider women in the down committee, but only the physical labor, because if they are doing this, but women also, there is another role also there which women can play. Because there is a practical need and strategic need, maybe due to different reason, different maybe there may be the different role in the committee, but so that is that kind of things are happening, uh, happening, and that's why I just want to raise in the and I will also that's why as the Partho has mentioned some questions when we are going to frame uh, some policy or the system in the community as well as at the government level. Some question: who will do what? Who will which regarding the whose access, control, ownership will be in with whom, and who will get the benefit? Who will get the benefit, and who are framing the rule in the maybe in the community level, maybe in the policy level. So all these questions has to be very clear before having any policy or any such kind of planning. And now I just want to flag uh, some issues in Assam, the water related issues. See, already the Patho has said that
Is there an audio problem, ma'am? Hello? Pranav, is there an audio problem there?
It is from Gita ma'am.
There's an audio problem, right?
Yes, maybe network issues.
Yes. But we're not hearing you. There could be a problem. Yeah, I mean, there's an issue with internet connectivity. We are not hearing you.
Yeah. No, okay, sorry. Yeah, it get disconnected, I think. I just want to raise some issues. Say, the inadequate access to water supply and associate course. It's a common thing, but it's a in some places still people are struggling to have the minimum water, and some locations, some areas are the water become as water stand as their salients too. Like the flood situation and all, drought and flood always there. And I just want to, because I issues, and if uh, say in Udalguri districts, in the Bhutan Foothills, there is a village. I just forgot the name of the village. Anyway, when we had started working there from Mahila Samaikha, then uh, during the baseline survey, we saw that the whole the villagers, every village, no one take bath in the morning. Everybody take bath in the evening, including children, including all. Then when we asked it, they replied, because we know that there is underground water problems are there, because as it is this zone is that, and so that's why the government water supply system was there. This boring system was there, but it was defunct for a long period. But then a group of women, the women of those villages, come and form a group, and they have collected money from each family, and they repaired, and 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 they have make a system that per family, in a day, in the morning and in the evening, they will give water, and in the morning maybe two bucket or three buckets, in the evening or two buckets or three buckets. The system when we made, that was the 3 years old system they had started. So one way there is a crisis. If we rightly manage, and we can see here the woman's role here. So that's why I brought this example here. So but still I would like to say but it is a very uh, important issues in Assam. And I just during this I just mentioned the I am involved in the study. Then there I met one lady. She was from Sorry, it was from Hubli district. She said, I just read out her sentence, that during the flood, if nearby tube wells or other drinking water source get inundated, then they have to go by boat to collect drinking water. Among the lady, one lady said many a time we use flood water for every purpose, including for drinking. That is the reality. It is not it is not 10 years, 5 years before. It's just 6 months. The information I gathered it from field just
Okay.
6 months ago. Likewise, there is a lack of access to the sanitation. We did a survey for the 50 villages, 50 household only, 50 household, and out of that, 39% of this family household doesn't have this proper sanitation in the normal time, and in the crisis situation, we can understand the things. And already I mentioned the lack of participation in communication in the community management system, and also there is no proper communication planning for utilization of underground water source both at the rural and urban. If we see the situation of the drinking water or other water crisis in Guwahati itself, it's a day by day in the situation becoming the critical. So in these terms, why as I mentioned the underground water, say when I am living now in the area, I here in 2012 I came, there was no problem at all. But over this period, lots of flats and buildings have been, it's come around in a nearby area, and immediately the water crisis started.
Sure. Madam, can you please conclude?
Yeah, it's just I just finished. So that's why this underground, there is no proper communication for utilization of underground water is also very important thing. And secondly, during the flood or during the disaster situation, the relief camps and relief camps are also become a very horrible situation in terms of sanitation, in terms of drinking water, and all wash system. And also these are the main issues I just flag it here. But most importantly, if we can ensure the women's participation, if in the all the aspects, in the formal and informal aspect, then definitely we can hope for the better world, better situation. Because I have that beliefs, and there lots of good examples are there, although I have raised one example. So like that, there are lots of other examples are there. But until and unless if we not empower equally both men and women, and then we cannot have the society with the gender equality, we cannot ensure. With that, I conclude my session here. Thanks to all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. You have actually laid the baseline of this entire discussion, and you have raised the some of the most important issues. And I think the other panelists and later the discussant will pick up different points from your exposition, and then they can expand into their specific areas of concern. What I think is important from your discussion is that many times we think that everything is right with our traditions, our customs, and we really do not look critically at our traditional institutions and practices. But then you gave a very pertinent example of the dong. Maybe some people do not know about what a dong is. Dong is a system of traditional water harvesting, which you can see in practice mostly in Western Assam, especially in those areas where our Boro community lives. It is an age-old practice of traditional irrigation actually. But unfortunately, this is one of those traditional systems where women are isolated. There's no participation. If you go by the customary, provisions of the entire system for more than 150 years that it has been in practice, women have never been allowed to take part. Although, most of the purposes for which the dogs carry water are actually served by women. So there lies the contradiction, So that's why, we should also look into not only, common water policies, but then again, as you have said, in some cases where there are good provisions in favor of gender and other, say, sensitivities, it is, the mindset of the bureaucrats and technocrats, because of which it doesn't get implemented on ground. So with that, we will proceed towards the panel discussion. So the first, our first panelist is Madam Priti Madan. We have 5 minutes for each of the panelists. They will deliberate for 5 minutes, and later on the discussions with comment and maybe also put questions to all the panelists. And since we have invited some people who are from grassroots and who are also willing to share experiences from various sections of society from grassroots. So we have kept the next sessions, we have kept bilingual, Most of them many of you will speak in English, but some of you also speak in local language, maybe in Assamese. So I think it should not be a problem for now. I request Madam Priti Madanji to kindly open the panel discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Can you hear me?
Can you slightly increase your sound level, ma'am? We're hearing you, but the sound is feeble.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Parthajyoti Das, for inviting me for a panel discussion to speak in the first webinar series titled, Why is Gender Perspective Important in Water Governance? A discussion in the context of Assam. The objective of your series, I learned from the discussion, is to promote the need for an appropriate water policy, which is inclusive and adaptive and futuristic. It's a very good idea. And I think the discussions today are really going to be important inputs for the policy making, because I have been on the policy side, and these kind of discussions always give us very good ideas. Thank you. So I'm only going to make a very brief few points. Everything has been touched. In the recent years, the water ecosystems in Assam, in fact, the whole of Northeast, have seen a major impact of climate change, leading to increased floods coupled with droughts. Droughts were largely uncommon in Assam, as Assam was traditionally been a wet state. I have visited Assam many times, and most of the time they'll say, no, don't go during the monsoons, flights won't land and this. But we've never heard of droughts in Assam, which is now becoming common. In the recent phenomena of climate change has resulted in rainfall pattern changes also. The average rainfall has declined and the average temperature of the state has increased. In this changing scenario has made formulation of water policy more urgent and important. So I think you need to really push for a proper water policy because of this climate change impact in Assam. Climate change has a greater impact on women, as the speaker before me, Geeta Rani Bhattacharya, was explaining. On women, because particularly the rural women, and this is across the country, these women are engaged in agriculture as marginal farmers, in livestock rearing and fisheries. They are more vulnerable, their savings are low. The situation is aggravated with a trend of men migrating outside the state for better opportunities. So women are left alone to fend for themselves. They don't own any land. Sometimes they don't. I mean, they really are really in a pathetic state, some of them. The power relations determined by the social context reinforce their gender inequalities. Their unequal participation in decision-making process prevents them from contributing in planning, policy making, and implementation of activities related to climate change. As was discussed earlier discussion, which I enjoyed a lot, Dr. Geeta Rani Bhattacharya was saying. So it's the power relations in the social context, in the village, in the in the whole society that reinforces the gender inequality there. Women have substantial involvement and stake in agriculture and domestic water use because most of the time they are doing the farming, they are doing the livestock work, and they are doing also the domestic water use. They can play a very important role in the issue of climate change and water governance, as they have a good understanding. They have the real grassroots level understanding of what needs to, how they could, and they also know how to adapt to the changing environmental conditions and come up with practical solutions. We all as housewives, we know when there's a shortage of something, how we can, they play the same role for water use. They come up with very practical solutions. Effective and active participation of women in water policy can be a game changer, especially when there has been such a climate change impact. There has to be an effective and active participation of women. So across the country, in some areas, what we see is that women collectives are actually being involved in taking up water-related schemes. It is seen that these areas, the ponds are getting repaired, cleaned, rejuvenated by women collectives. And these kind of involvement of women has been very successful. Women collectives are innovatively leveraging Narega to build community assets to help water conservation. They are involved in watershed programs, water harvesting. So there are pockets of them, everywhere. So these issues are not unique to Assam. There is across the country, there has been a shift in climate change, and there's been an impact. A lot of work has taken place across the country. There are a number of models that can be emulated, if you can see what's happening successfully. But one such model which I think will fit in for Assam, because it suits the ethos and culture of Assam, would be identification of water assets of each village, and management of these assets should be placed under the control of women of the village. We could try it as a pilot. So we take a village, we identify what are the water assets, start involving the women. It could be some kind of, it will be an interesting pilot. There should be similar decentralization of water assets at the mohalla level, the family level, which is controlled, where it is controlled by women. They should be planning the use of water at every stage. We could try this as a pilot. Women can be involved also in water issues for water budgeting at the panchayat level. We can, I don't know if they're already doing it, but if they are, it will be a good idea. I think somewhere in Bihar and all, they have started doing that. It has been observed that women are included in various committees, like we have the watershed committee and these committees, water governance. So the committees have women, but women don't understand why they are there. They don't, so they just go sit there and come back. There's no contribution. And they say there was a woman in the committee. So what we need to do is for them, we need to actually brief them in the local language, make them understand their role. This kind of a thing has to be done by the civil society organizations. They need to be, the women need to be educated literally. So role of women as agents of change should be integrated into the strategy for water security. They could be game changers. And with that, I think thank you.
Many thanks, ma'am. Actually, you have touched base with all the actual crux of the matter. So I would say that, this is absolute, kind of, textbook material that has come to this, the crux of the matter, I would say, and this is so much relevant, the examples that you have given, and I expected you to, give some pan-Indian examples so that we can adopt, especially the, the water collectives, etc. And this practice, except for certain, traditional practices, there is not much women-centered activities to be seen on ground, except for certain, certain areas where probably, some specially designed interventions have been carried out. For example, wherever, Gita madam with her Mahila Samaksha have worked, you can still see some impact of, how women have mobilized themselves, formation of cooperative, etc., etc. But in other places, you really don't see. And what the reason? Reason is that mostly, forget about, the state level, even at that district level, even the panchayat level, there's hardly, any sensitivity around the special, requirement of the gender requirements. But then, yes, thank you very much for, these are very valuable input. And some of your suggestions, definitely your whatever you have suggested, including, identification of the village level water assets, and it needs to be seen to what extent women have a role in managing, or forget about owning, at least managing. And definitely we can do a few pilots around, and we'll definitely try.
Because I think my knowledge set is there. I think Maharashtra has done some pioneering work actively involving women, and also in these ponds and all cleaning has been done in South India, in Tamil Nadu.
Yeah, those are the two examples that have come to my mind. Number one is the Pani Panchayat of Maharashtra, which is so very famous and so successful in many places, and the tank system of South India, where definitely there are good experiments with women role and all that. Thank you very much. I now request Dr. Arpita Das to give her input. Arpita.
Thank you, Patoda. Great to be coming after stalwarts, particularly both in policy practice and academia. So really, really good to be here. I'm going to build on what the previous speaker, the lead speaker, and the panelists before me has said. I'm not going to repeat it. So I'm going to directly launch into how you had sent the requirements kind of for the discussion. So I'm going to begin by saying that I think it's well established that women, despite being given the role of being a custodian, have not really been given any respect or any authority around decision making. So what I term this as is the fact that women have duties and they have responsibilities around water. They don't have the rights that come with those duties and responsibilities. Now, if you look at the general overall Indian context, and I say this with caution, but everyone is pretty vocal about their rights, about the rights that they hold. And it always, the fundamental duties of being a citizen of India always almost comes as an afterthought. But in the case of water and women, and I would say extend that to natural resources overall, it's always the dutiful responsibility that takes primacy over rights. And as a result, what we see is women's representation is not only is it poor, and not only is there a passive exclusion, because my previous speakers have given examples of how, women are there just to tick box, and they go in and they fulfill like a tick box requirement, but aren't expected to do much. And then other end of the spectrum is an active exclusion from mega structures. So there is an active exclusion of women from government, from the market, from institutional hierarchies, all of which you showed Pathoda, in your slide initially, where you talked about the different social, technical, instrumental, government, and all of those relationships that women have with water. Research, women are hugely excluded from research, and also intergovernmental structures, working where I work now, where we work at public service, and I work in an OECD country, a developed country. But in a sense, women's participation still remains at the periphery, because you don't see in a country led by a woman prime minister, young woman prime minister, and everything that comes with it, you don't really still see the active participation of women. And that's something which is, I would say, in my humble opinion, is pretty pan-global. So the dutiful responsibility for women always comes in without much of the rights coming into the picture. And this is a very constructed and active excluded space. So it just doesn't come naturally. It seems natural to us because it's been practiced in its shape and form for so long. Also, what I'd like to say again at the macro level, a lot of the frameworks that we work with, whether they're United Nations frameworks or frameworks like Sendai and things like that, gender isn't really inbuilt in any of those frameworks. Gender always almost comes as an afterthought in that as well. So when we talk about gender inequities, we have to understand that there is a relationship, definitely in Assam, but pretty much again globally, the fact that you have macro structures, which often are, because they're male dominated, don't include an active gender component. And when they come in contact with the micro existing inequities and inequalities, they pretty much get superimposed. So what then happens is you exacerbate, you kind of have a situation where you have an institutional stamp on inequality and inequity going around. So that is pretty important as a core issue. Again, then narrowing it down specifically to Assam, I think we have commonalities in urban scenarios and rural scenarios. So now urban flooding is very common, like you said, and like some of the speakers said, drought this year, I know from a fact that drought is an inbuilt issue. So urban drought, rural drought, all of it is happening. Drinking water and sanitation, again, are issues both in the urban and rural context. In the urban context, and rapidly urbanizing and poorly planned cities like Guwahati also have workplace water issues. Pre-COVID, when you had workplaces, you have major water and sanitation issues at workplaces, which obviously hinder women's participation in work. In the rural scenario, there's something which is relatively, I would say far more in rural areas, is the work that women have to do around water supply versus water supply. So the complete lack of water supply in households, and the absolute expectation of women to go hunt for water sources and again get into that whole space of dutiful responsibility and provide water for the family and the community in certain cases. And I think what is most important in this entire discussion of identifying issues is the fact that we have to understand the intersectionality. So women are not a homogeneous group. They cannot be understood as a homogeneous group. There are many layers to it. There's urban, there's rural, there's there's indigenous, tribal, then there are migrants, and there are people who are displaced, and then there is the aspect of poverty, there's the issue of disability, there are there are women who are widowed or who are divorced or who are single, and all those layers need to be understood. So women are not one homogeneous group. So, and that's important from a policy perspective to understand, because when you talk about policy, you can't have a policy of one size fits all. You can't like have a whole women aspect in water and then expect that to work from everyone. And because we are in this unique, tabula rasa kind of beginning stage of where we are looking at policy, where we can actually incorporate intersectionality when we talk about that. So I think that's important. Moving on to the environmental and socio-economic drivers, I think what is again important to acknowledge is the fact around justice, social and environmental justice. And it's not a, it's not like a abstract concept of justice. It's very real. When you talk about climate change, when you talk about floods, when you talk about water-induced disasters, it's linked to land degradation, it's linked to landlessness, it's linked to deforestation, dam building, all of which have cascading, all these are decisions which are made in very male-centric spaces and in very male-centric manners, but which obviously have a huge impact and a massive impact, way more on women than on men. And I'd like to give an example. When I was preparing for this talk, I realized the whole it's an instrument all of us have seen. The piece of infrastructure which is very common to drinking water is the hand pump, which is a common sight across India, across villages as well. And the hand pump, I had never thought of it in that way, is a very masculine thing, because the first thing a hand pump requires you to do is to apply a lot of pressure and force, and it requires physical force. So it's meant, not only is it exclusionary for people, it's meant for very able-bodied men. So it's not meant for a man who probably has a crutch, and it's definitely not meant for a woman who is pregnant or is carrying children or, menstruating or all of that. And yet over the years, whether even pulling water from the well are two very important sites, and something that I saw in your pictures as well, a very masculine infrastructure. And if we have to talk about water provisioning, which is a woman's responsibility, we have to ask ourselves the question why we've not been able to overcome this whole very male model of hand pump. Because we do know the moment, and one of the things which I think people are very relieved when they move from a rural to an urban context is they can turn a tap, and turning a tap really makes a lot of difference. It takes away a lot of physical labor which is associated with water provisioning. Now that's another thing, whether how much water you get from that tap or anything. But really, when you make that simple switch, it makes a lot of difference. Also, another thing which is, I think, again, something which is pertinent for Assam is the fact that women are custodians of indigenous knowledge, and yet that amount of knowledge is not always translated into indigenous practice, something like what Madam Gita had said earlier around the dong system. The fact that women are not allowed to participate in a lot of things, and yet women hold a lot of knowledge. That is something that I remember most clearly from my PhD research days, some of which I've also spent with you, Pathada, in districts of Lakhimpur and Dhemaji, that women hold so much of knowledge about water and things which we take for everyday notion, storage, filtration, even ideas around how to irrigate. And yet that knowledge is lost. It's nowhere documented. And, so that's again an important thing. And the final point around issues that I want to make is squarely around women and health. So during COVID, it's been made very, very obvious that women's health has been severely impacted, but every single woman experiencing menstrual periods, pregnancy or pregnancy loss, childbirth, menopause, all of it has an intrinsic and an intimate relationship with water, because all of these, to be healthy during all these different phases of uniquely feminine experiences, you have a unique relationship with water. And when we don't think about drinking water, sanitation, and the relationship of women with water, we lose out on that. Finally, I think something which we need to address is the fact that women also face a lot of violence in their relationship around water. So whether it's going to fetch water, whether it's using a public toilet, or whether it's not having any toilet in a situation of displacement, landlessness, agricultural loss, or even when they experience domestic violence, something that has undergone a lot of things. So women's experiences of violence also has a very intrinsic relationship with the water relations and the stresses that come with it. I'd like to give some recommendations because we're talking about policy here. I think the first thing is often women's involvement with water and the lack of documentation is related to what is very pertinently said, the absence of data. And it's very important to have a specific collection of gendered experiences, no matter what study is happening around water or natural resources, to be focused on collecting data around women. Again, intersectional data, even better. Something that I agreed, which was where my previous speaker had mentioned, was the fact around making information accessible for education and awareness, and having different sources and ways to do it. So let's not all become very enamored with this whole digital thing, because a poster still works far more in a lot of areas around how to purify water during a flood situation. So let's be open to the idea of having different kinds of ICT or information communication technology that we need to communicate to women about water, and also get responses from women about their relationships with water to feed into this policy. Hear and include diverse voices, and empower stakeholders to include and have gender action sensitivity to ensure that the data is captured qualitatively. for a roadmap ahead, I would like to say that we need to focus, and this is my input into the policy, is to ensure that we have gender equity, social equality, and poverty, and have these three as a perspective when we are right at the planning stage, such as this, for projects, initiatives, operations, and a statewide water policy. Improve women's agency and go beyond just decision making and empowerment, and start with enabling participation. Look at ways and means in which we can have. So can we have stakeholder groups? Can we have round robins? Can we actually go into the field when we are able to? Can we have more of virtual medium? Do the hard work of finding out what works and then pick up on what works well and for whom. So not a one size fits all. Break the silos between gender and natural resource management, including, very importantly, land rights. And I think use this forum to also talk about, let's involve women. It's great to be on an all women panel. That's not something that I did during my PhDs. I was often the only woman in the room when I was doing my PhD about 10 years ago. But then let's not stop at that. So let's not only have women in the room when we're discussing gender, but let's have women in the room when we're discussing any aspect of water, particularly around funding, particularly around infrastructure, disaster risk reduction, and irrigation. Because when women are the ones who are working in agriculture, there's no need for an irrigation panel to be all men or all men on it, because women have a stake to play. And also when we're doing that, let's break down the barrier of education. So let's not only have people who can speak English or who can, who have access to a computer and get online and give good, lovely presentations. Let's rework around understanding how we want to involve stakeholders in it. So yeah, I think that's about where I would like to conclude. And again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to participate.
Thank you, Arpita. I could see, your deliberation could be very useful in designing excellent input into what we are intending to do. Actually, our own version of a gender chapter for policymakers. But especially I picked up two important points that you have emphasized and re-emphasized: the dutiful responsibility but no rights. Definitely, no doubt about that. And technology is highly masculine, no doubt about that. The right example you have given, I remember in 1980s with great enthusiasm, all over India, our governments introduced this so-called different kind of palms, and one was very famous or infamous called Tara palm. And policymakers, after a few years, when there was an assessment, didn't have any clue why rural women were rejecting it. There was no use, why they were not using it. And finally, audit revealed that it was so inconvenient to elderly women, pregnant women, or it was all about physical stretch caused by that particular kind of product. But I don't think our technology developers have learned any lesson from that. And another important point you have made is, as we transform from an rural to urban context, our hand pumps become tap water and takes away the stretch and drudgery. And I think what is important to mention here that is the main purpose of introducing the National Jal Jeevan Mission, which is now running in Assam, in India, to provide piped water supply so that you can get water from a tap. This is a very good mission. Let us hope that it will be successful. I mean, till now we have encouraging results. So that I think will play a very important role in reducing physical stretch of fetching water or collecting water. So from an adaptation point of view, from point of view of reducing women vulnerability, some such national level important policy decisions are required. This is one of the very few. Thank you very much. Can I now invite Swapnali? You are ready? Is your system working, Swapnali?
Thank you, Pathoda.
Good. Swapnali?
মই ভাবিছো মই ৰেডি আছো
খুব ভাল So my কৈছো Swapnali is giving us actually ekdom ami jitu ko ekdom grassroots ekdom grounded experience of her. She lives in Lakhimpur district, and Lakhimpur and Dhemaji, we know that these are very very highly affected by water related stretches, not only flood but also water crisis. So Swapnali, তোমাৰ কথাখিনি শুনিবলৈ আমি ৰৈ আছো actually. Please.
Thank you, Partho. মই সকলোলৈকে শুভেচ্ছা জনাই বা মোৰ শ্ৰদ্ধা জনাই মই অসমীয়াতে মোৰ কথাখিনি ক'বলৈ ওলাইছো। আচলতে পানী আৰু মহিলা এইটো মই আচলতে ইমান দিনে চিন্তাই কৰি চোৱা নাছিলো এইটো বিষয়ৰ ওপৰত। গতিকে আজি মই আপোনালোকৰ কথাখিনি খুবেই মানে ভালকে শুনিছো বা মই মানে বহুত কথা বুজিছো। আচলতে মই মহিলাৰ সৈতে পানী চিন্তাই কৰি চোৱা নাছিলো। পাৰ্থই সেইদিনাখনি ক'লে, তাৰপিছত মই চিন্তা কৰিবলৈ লাগিলো আৰু চালো, তেতিয়া দেখিলো যে বা এইটোতো এখন মানে সাংঘাতিক এটা হিউজ মানে ষ্টাডি এৰিয়া, ষ্টাডি ফিল্ড। তাৰপিছতহে মই আচলতে ষ্টাডি কৰা আৰম্ভ কৰিছো, কাৰণ মই মহিলা আৰু পানী এই বিষয়ে ষ্টাডি কৰা নাছিলো। সেইটো কাৰণে আপোনালোকক মই কৈ লৈছো প্ৰথমতে। গতিকে মোৰ কাৰণে মই এইটো ফিল্ডত একেবাৰে নতুন। পাৰ্থই ফোন কৰাৰ পিছৰ পৰাহে মই এইটো কথাৰ ওপৰত চিন্তা কৰিছো। এতিয়া মই যিখিনি কথা পালো যে সঁচাকে হয়, মই যিখিনি পঢ়িলো বা যিখিনি মই জানিলো, সঁচাকে নাৰী মানে মহিলা আৰু পানীৰ সঁচাকে কিন্তু বহুত ডাঙৰ ৰিলেশ্যন আছে। গতিকে মই ইয়াত প্ৰথমতে এটা কথা পালো যে কি যে ৰব মই কৈ আছো, মহিলাসকল হৈছে কি ৱাটাৰ মেনেজাৰ। তেওঁলোকক আচলতে ৱাটাৰ মেনেজাৰ বুলি ক'ব পাৰে। কাৰণ এজন মানে যেনেকে আমি ভাবো পুৰুষসকলে সদায় নিৰাপত্তাৰ কথা ভাবে, মই এতিয়া নতুনকে এইবিলাক চিন্তা কৰি পাইছো দেই। আপোনালোকে একদম অভিজ্ঞ মানুহ, মোৰ কথাখিনি আপোনালোকে জাষ্ট শুনক। মানে কি মই কৈছো পুৰুষসকলে যেনেকে দিব, তেওঁলোকৰ যেন ইনকাম কেনেকে কৰিব, ফেমিলিটোক সব ফালৰ পৰা কেনেকে আগুৱাই নিব, তেনেকে যে পুৰুষসকলে ভাবে, মহিলাসকলে কিন্তু মহিলাসকলৰ মানে যিবিলাক চিন্তাধাৰা পানীৰ পৰাই আৰম্ভ হয়। গতিকে ৱাটাৰ মেনেজাৰ এটা ফেমিলিৰ কাৰণে হওক, এটা ছচাইটিৰ কাৰণে হওক, মানে মহিলাসকলে হৈছে ৱাটাৰ মেনেজাৰ। পানী কিমান দূৰৰ পৰা পানী আনিব লাগে, পানী কেনেকে মেনেজ কৰিব লাগিব, কাৰণ পানীৰ আটাইতকৈ বেছি প্ৰয়োজন হাউচ হোল্ড এক্টিভিটিজ বিলাকৰ পৰা হাইজিন, চেনিটাইজেশ্যন, এইকেইটা শব্দ একদম কমন। এইবিলাকৰ কাৰণে মহিলাসকল কি হৈছে খুব মানে এইবিলাকৰ লগতে মহিলাসকল জড়িত হৈ থাকে। গতিকে মহিলাসকল হৈছে ৱাটাৰ মেনেজাৰ। আৰু বিশেষকৈ আমাৰ সাউথ ইষ্ট এছিয়ান যিবিলাক কাণ্ট্ৰি আছে, এই কাণ্ট্ৰি বিলাকত সঁচাকে মহিলাসকল হৈছে ৱাটাৰ মেনেজাৰ। আকৌ এটা কথাত মই এতিয়া চালো যে কি মহিলাসকল হৈছে কি যেতিয়া ডিজাষ্টাৰৰ টাইমত বেছি ভালনাৰেবল পানীৰ কাৰণে। মহিলাই পানী মেনেজ কৰে, অথচ মহিলাই মানে পানীৰ টাইমত বেছি ভালনাৰেবল। এতিয়া কথা হৈছে কি যে এটা মই পালো যে sorry, disturb hall. আহিছে? হেল্ল' পাৰ্থ, শুনিছা?
এতিয়া শুনিছো, কোৱা।
শুনা। এতিয়া হৈছে কি যে এইটো মই লিংকটো হেৰাই দিলো। এতিয়া মই হৈছে কি লখিমপুৰৰ মানুহ, তুমি চিনাকি কৰিয়ে দিছা, লখিমপুৰ ধেমাজি। ইয়াত পানীৰ লগত যিটো কানেকশ্যন থাকে, ইয়াত কৈছে কি আমাৰ পানীৰ নাটনি নহয়। শুনি আছা নে মোক?
শুনি আছো।
শুনি আছা, ঠিক আছে। ইয়াত আমাৰ পানীৰ নাটনি নহয়, ইয়াত পানী বেছিহে হয়, বৰষুণ বেছি হয়। আমাৰ যিটো লোকেশ্যন মনচুন ৰিজন, মনচুনৰ আকৌ আমি হিমালয়ৰ ফুটহিলত থকা একদম নৰ্থত থকা এটা এৰিয়া হিচাপে লখিমপুৰ ধেমাজিত সদায় কি হয়, পানী বেছিহে হয়। কাৰণ বাৰিষাৰ প্ৰথম জাক বৰষুণ আৰম্ভ হোৱাৰ লগে লগে লখিমপুৰ ধেমাজিত বানপানী আৰম্ভ হয়। অসমৰ নিউজ পেপাৰ বিলাকে বা নিউজ চেনেল বিলাকে সেইটো প্ৰকাশ কৰে, আপোনালোকে নিশ্চয় সকলোৱে পাইছে। এতিয়া কথা হ'ল কি, গতিকে এইটো অঞ্চলত যিটো পানীৰ প্ৰব্লেম বা পানীৰ যিটো মেনেজমেণ্ট, সেইটো বেলেগ ধৰণৰ হয়। কাৰণ ইয়াত আমাৰ বেছি পানীখিনি আমি কেনেকে মেনেজ কৰিম বা বানপানী হলে মানে আমি কেনেকৈ নাৰীসকলে নিজক কেনেকে বা মহিলাসকলে নিজক কেনেকৈ প্ৰটেকশ্যন দি ৰাখিব, এইবিলাক কথা এটা এইটো অঞ্চলত আহিছে। গতিকে এতিয়া হৈ গৈছে কি যে মই এটা কথা পাইছিলো যে access to safe water at home gives women hope, health and opportunity. যদি ঘৰত পানীটো ধুনীয়াকে পাই থকা যায়, তেতিয়াহ'লে মহিলাসকল যথেষ্ট এক্টিভ হৈ থাকিব পাৰে। যিকোনো কামত কেনেকে মই কৈছিলো যে পুৰুষে যেনেকে এটা ফ্যামিলিৰ প্ৰটেকচনৰ কাৰণে চাই তেনেকে মহিলাসকল হৈছে সদায় ক্ৰিয়েটিভ মহিলাসকলে সদায় ক্ৰিয়েটিভিটি মহিলাসকলৰ বেছি আৰু মহিলাসকলে সদায় ক্ৰিয়েটিভ কামত ইনভলভ হৈ থাকিবলৈ ভাল পায় সাস্টেইনেবিলিটি যেটো বস্তু আছে এটো পানীৰ লগত খুব বেছি কানেক্টেড গতিকে এই হিচাপে চাবলৈ গলে কি হ'ল মহিলা আৰু পানীৰ সম্পৰ্ক বহুত বেছি যেটো মই এতিয়া ৰিয়েলাইজ কৰিলো এতিয়া কথা হৈ গল কি যে এতিয়া অলৰেডি অৰ্পিতাই কলে গীতা বাইদেৱে কলে যে নাৰীসকলক মানে কি হয় মহিলাসকলক মানে এই যে সোশিয়াল পলিসি এবিলাকত ইনভলভ কৰা নহয় যদিও আজিকালি হৈছে যেনেকৈ মই পালো যে যেটো 1992 যেটো এটা ইন্টাৰনেশনাল কনফাৰেন্স হৈছিলে তাত কি হৈছিলে ডাবলিনত এটা ইন্টাৰনেশনাল কনফাৰেন্স হৈছিলে তাতে কিন্তু মহিলাসকলক মানে মহিলাসকল যে পানীৰ লগত কানেক্টেড ইস্যু বিলাকৰ লগত সম্পৰ্কিত হৈ থাকিব লাগে হেতু এটা কথা ডিসিশন আহিলে আকৌ পালো 2005 পৰা 2015 যেটো ইন্টাৰনেশনাল ডিকেড বুলি কৈছিলে ইন্টাৰনেশনাল ডিকেড ফৰ ওয়াটাৰ যেটো ওয়াটাৰ ফৰ লাইফ তাৰ ওপৰত যেটো ইন্টাৰনেশনাল ডিকেড পালন কৰা হৈছিল তাতো মহিলাসকলক যথেষ্ট গুৰুত্ব দিয়া হ'ল মহিলাসকলৰ যিবিলাক আইডিয়া সেইবিলাকক গুৰুত্ব দিয়া হ'ল গতিকে ইতিমধ্যে কি হৈছে প্ল্যানিং পাৰপাছত মহিলাৰ এক্টিভিটি মহিলাৰ যিবিলাক আইডিয়া এইবিলাক আহিছে তথাপি অৰ্পিতাই এটা কথা ক'লে যে সঁচাকে হয় মহিলাসকলৰ ওচৰত যিমানবোৰ মানে ধৰা অভিজ্ঞতা থাকে পানীৰ লগতে জীৱন পাৰ কৰি থকা যিবিলাক অভিজ্ঞতা থাকে সেই অভিজ্ঞতাবোৰ কিন্তু আন্ডাৰ এস্টিমেট কৰা হয় গুৰুত্ব দিয়া নহয় গতিকে কিন্তু আমাৰ ঠাইবিলাকত এতিয়াও সেইবিলাকে কম গুৰুত্ব পাই আছে কিন্তু এতিয়া যি ধৰণে পাঠৰ যিটো এটো মানে যিটো পাঠৰ যিটো কাম হাতত লৈছে গভৰ্ণমেণ্টক বা যিবিলাক পলিসি মেকাৰ এইবিলাকৰ আগত আমাৰ আইডিয়া বিলাক তুলি দিয়া কাৰণে এইবিলাক এটো এটা খুব ভাল ষ্টেপ এটো কাৰণে পাঠ মই এইখিনি ধন্যবাদ দি থলো এতিয়া কিছুমান কথা যেনেকে মই কলো যে আমি বানপানী এৰিয়াত থকা মানুহ বানপানী এৰিয়াত থকা প্ৰথম কথাটো হ'ল কি যে টয়লেট সিস্টেমটো মই এটা কথা কৈছিলো যে কিছুমান স্থায়ী ঘৰ বনাব লাগে অস্থায়ী ভাৱে থাকিবৰ কাৰণে স্থায়ী ঘৰ বনাব লাগে কাৰণ কি ধৰা তুমি আমি কিছুমান এতিয়া যেনেকে উখ ভেটিৰ ব্যৱস্থা যেটো কাজিৰঙাত উখ ভেটিৰ ব্যৱস্থা কৰা হ'ল কাৰণে জীৱ-জন্তু বিলাকে ভালকে থাকিব পাৰিছে তেনেকৈ কি হৈ গল যদি আমাৰ সহজতে বানপানী হোৱা ঠাইবিলাকত কিছুমান উখ ভেটি বনাই উখ ভেটিৰ কাৰণে বেলেগকে মাটি আনিব নালাগে নদীয়ে সেই মাটি আনি দিয়ে যদি উখ ভেটি বনাই যদি ধৰা তাত যদি কিছুমান মানে পাৰ্মানেন্ট স্থায়ী ঘৰৰ কথা কৈছো পাৰ্মানেন্ট স্ট্ৰাকচাৰ তাত যদি বনাই ৰাখা হয় আৰু বানপানী যিবিলাক ঠাইত সদায় আহে সেইবিলাক ঠাইৰ পৰা যদি অন্তত মহিলাসকলৰ কাৰণে সুবিধাজনককে কিছুমান এতিয়া ধৰা স্কুলত ৰাখে সেইবিলাকত বহুত ক্ষেত্ৰত অসুবিধা হয় আৰু গতিকে তেনেকুৱা ঠাইবিলাকত কিছুমান স্থায়ী ঘৰ মানে স্থায়ী স্যানিটাইজেশনৰ ৰিলেক্সৰ ব্যৱস্থা যদি সুন্দৰভাৱে কৰি ইলেক্ট্ৰিফিকেশনৰ পৰা ধৰি সুন্দৰভাৱে কৰি ৰখা হয় তেতিয়া সেই বানপানীৰ মাহ কেইটা তেওঁলোকে স্থায়ীভাৱে তাত থাকি পেলাই অসুবিধা নোহোৱাকে ধৰা পাৰ কৰিব কিন্তু মানুহৰ আইডিয়া কি যে বানপানী আহিলে স্কুলত থাকিব লাগে আৰু স্কুলবিলাকত টয়লেট বিলাক কেতিয়াও ভালকে নবনায় গতিকে তেতিয়া সেই মহিলাসকলে যথেষ্ট বা ছোৱালীবিলাকে বহুত অসুবিধাত ভুগে কাৰণ ইতিমধ্যে আপোনালোকে কৈছে যে কেনেকে স্যানিটাইজেশনৰ কাৰণে হাইজিনৰ কাৰণে মহিলাক পানীৰ বেছি দৰকাৰ হয় গতিকে এইবিলাক ক্ষেত্ৰত যেতিয়া কনষ্ট্ৰাকচন হ'ব যেতিয়া স্কুলৰ টয়লেট কনষ্ট্ৰাকচন হ'ব তেতিয়া যদি মহিলাৰ আইডিয়া বিলাক বা মহিলাৰ সুবিধা অসুবিধা কথাবিলাকত যদি গুৰুত্ব দিয়া যায় তেতিয়া হেখন যেতিয়া পলিচিটো যেতিয়া এপ্লিকেশন হ'ব তাত যেতিয়া নাৰীৰ আইডিয়া বিলাক মহিলাৰ আইডিয়া বিলাক লৈ পেলাই কামবোৰ কৰা হ'ব তেতিয়া মই ভাবিছো এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ বহুতখিনি আমাৰ যিখিনি মহিলাসকলে মানে মুখামুখি হৈ থকা বহুত অসুবিধা তাৰমানে কমিব আৰু তেতিয়া আমি ভাবিম যে আমাৰ এইবিলাক মানে সাৰ্থক হ'ব আমি সাকসেস হ'ম এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ কথা এইবিলাক মই হেকাৰণে এটো কথা ভাবিছো কাৰণ আপোনালোকে অলৰেডি ক'লে পেনেলিষ্টসকলে ক'লে যে কেনেকুৱা আমাৰ কিমানবোৰ কামৰ কাৰণে আমাৰ কি লাগে পুৰুষতান্ত্ৰিক সমাজৰ কথা পলিচিৰ কথা প্লেনিঙৰ কথা পাঠ্যই এটো কথা কৈ গ'ল যে প্লেনিঙৰ যেটো আটাইতকৈ বেছি দৰকাৰী কথা যে প্লেনিং পাৰপাছত বা পলিচি মেকিঙত কেনেকে আমি যিবিলাক মহিলাৰ যিবোৰ মহিলাৰ এইবিলাক আইডিয়াবিলাক নোলোৱাৰ কাৰণে ধৰা পলিচি মেকিঙত কি হয় কিছুমান ক্ষেত্ৰত নাৰীৰ যিবিলাক সুবিধা অসুবিধা মহিলাৰ সুবিধা অসুবিধা বিলাক গুৰুত্ব নিদিয়াকৈ থাকি যায় গতিকে যদি আমি পলিচি মেকিঙত এইবিলাক লাইন যদি আমি চাওঁ তেতিয়া হলে নিশ্চয় এইবিলাক অসুবিধা লাহে লাহে কমিব সেইবিলাক মানে ঠিক হ'ব বুলি মই ভাবিছো গতিকে আৰু কি কওঁ
তুমি ইতিমধ্যে যথেষ্ট কেইটা গুৰুত্বপূৰ্ণ কথা কৈছাই
গতিকে তাৰমানে কি ধৰা মোৰ ভিডিঅ'টো কিবা এটা ডিস্টাৰ্ব কৰিলে ন ভালকে অহা নাই গতিকে মই তাৰমানে কি এইটো কথা বুজাব বিচাৰিছো যিহেতু মই ক'লো নহয় এখন ফিল্ডত মই একেবাৰে নতুন আৰু ইমানখিনি কথা শুনি পেলাই মই আজি বহুত আইডিয়া পালো আৰু ভৱিষ্যতে এইটো ফিল্ডত মই আৰু চাগে ষ্টাডি কৰিম গতিকে এনেকুৱা ধৰণৰ কথাখিনি কৈ মই চাগে মোৰটো সামৰিম নেকি পাৰ্থ
Thank you. Thank you, Swapnali.
Thank you.
তুমি যে আমাৰ এই অনুষ্ঠানটোত অংশগ্ৰহণ কৰিলা তাৰ পৰা আমাৰ আটাইতকৈ ডাঙৰ প্ৰাপ্তি হ'ল তোমাৰ দৰে এগৰাকী you are a reputed researcher, academician, teacher. তুমি gender perspective টোৰ কথা সিমানকৈ ভবা নাছিলা তুমি অকমান sensitized হ'লা এতিয়া তুমি আগ্ৰহী হৈছা I am sure ভৱিষ্যতে তুমি এই সম্পৰ্কে কাম কৰিবা আৰু বহুতখিনি বৰঙনি এইটো ফিল্ডলৈ দিবা সেইটোৱে আমাৰ আটাইতকৈ ডাঙৰ প্ৰাপ্তি right so this was one of the objectives of having this kind of gathering. It's not only about bringing in only expert and specialists, it's a mixed group. If you see, we have people from all sections of society either listening or some of them will also be speaking. Gotike ami ki korisulu basically we were trying to identify people working in the water sector who could probably be potentially interested in gender issues. Some of them already are. Some of them were identified as potential people because there are not too many people who are interested in this field or working in this field. So, Hepalopra, our strategy to Hopolesa. Thank you, Swapnali. Thank you very much. So, can I now request Konkanika now to come and
Thank you, Parthoda. First of all, thank you for inviting me for this forum. Aru iman esteemed panelists or majot moi kotha kobo paisu tate moi bahut honored. If you don't mind, moi English ote kotha kom so that it's more easier. So I thought about why your questions and your objectives that you had outlined made me think about what I think are the issues and the solutions. I mean, the recommendations for this problem. And first of all, it is important to challenge the gender norms that we have through bringing in the gender perspective in water, because policymaking is often, in policymaking, it's often looked at that the man is the typical human being, and bringing in this perspective sort of challenges that norm. Also, of course, there is this point that if we are not bringing in the gender perspective, we are ignoring and losing out on half the population. So gender mainstreaming is a no-brainer for me. That said, it is therefore, of course, not very easy on how things have happened in the past, and even going forward, there has to be focus on this issue. I thought about the environmental drivers, more recent ones, especially in the context of Assam, which is going to increase the vulnerabilities for women. And apart from all the points that have been mentioned earlier, including points like migration, climate change adaptation, I think the water quality issue, especially in the context of the Brahmaputra, becomes very pertinent. Just a small point, in the Brahmaputra basin, especially covering the northeastern states, only 1% or 2% of our water is being treated. I mean, formally, like the central treatment. So that is, so while now we are able to ignore the pollution factor because of the huge river system that the Brahmaputra is and the dilution that happens, this is going to increasingly become a problem. And I think we have to start thinking about the water quality issue. And we know how it connects to health, especially when it comes to women's health. So that's one thing which I wanted to point out there. In terms of understanding different, like what are the barriers to understanding the role of women in the water sector, I thought of 3 points. Number one, and I'm also going to talk about what we can do to solve these, just my suggestions. Number one, I think there is lack of leadership support. And when I say leadership, it's not just the government, but also the top leadership of organizations who are instrumental in bringing change, including donors, right? So there is a lack of leadership support and buy-in about why genders should be integrated and mainstreamed. It is a problem. I mean, it's very problematic that still needs to be one has to convince people on why it's important. But that's the truth, and we have to take into account this critical lack of gender awareness and think of ways to solve it. Some points which apart from the facts that have been mentioned earlier about how women stakeholders are not recognized, their contribution, especially because it's unpaid, it's ignored. There's also this cultural stereotypes and the words we use, right? Like association of words like farmers, irrigators, water users are often recognized with men. And that has to also continue to change. Like even when we are writing reports, maybe we should start using more words like she when we go ahead. That is just one way where we can change the minds of maybe someone who is reading policy recommendations. That said, there is a way that the one way in which people can be sensitized in the leadership is through evidence. So maybe there has to be a systematic review of the evidence, including the financial liability that the lack of gender inclusion causes. Again, I'm not like it is unfortunate that we have to still convince about why gender is important, but evidence is what usually convinces people, and so that will be important. The next point which I wanted to talk about is the lack of dedicated funds to carry out analysis. I'm talking in terms of research, and Arpita had touched upon how women are excluded from research, be it like we know about how health has been heavily biased towards males. That's the same with the gendered perspective in water. It's the investments that are there for gender is vastly insufficient, and it does not address women's specific needs. So in terms of overall India numbers, in fact, India's gender budget, which comes from the union, the allocation towards gender equality has been same for the last 13 years. And that is not true for a lot of other sectors which the government deems important. So that has to change somewhere. Even in the case of water resource management, the budget is usually very small to research and implement. And therefore, it's time to move beyond lip service, like move beyond the planning that we have about gender equality and to mainstream it. What will happen when we have more funds is that we'll be able to, again, collect gender disaggregated data, carry out gender analysis, then mainstream gender analysis into the policy, think about gender budgeting in a more formal way, and also carry out monitoring and evaluation based on that. And this is not just for government-led studies, but also change should come from donors, like different foundations, banks, philanthropies, etc. The third point which I thought about was the lack of, and this is something which I am actually also, struggling with right now. We are working on a new project with Gates Foundation on climate adaptation in 3 states, looking at a systematic review of interventions. And gender is a basic component in that project, but it's so difficult to actually find people who are doing that analysis. So it's about, again, like you said, Parthoda, water professionals should be more engaged in understanding gender mainstreaming and to be able to carry out that analysis. And therefore, we have to think of ways in how we can increase that education or, that refresher courses about gender and analysis for professionals like us, young professionals like us, right? Apart from this, a lot has been talked about in terms of empowerment. Preeti ma'am had talked about collectives, right? I was thinking about collectives like Kudumbashri in Kerala, who have done so well. Different self-help groups in different states have done so well. But I also like to bring in 2 points. Apart from political empowerment through collectives, is the personal empowerment, which can happen through education. And therefore, while it might look like it may seem like a separate issue, girls' education will connect. It's a nexus issue, and is going to link back into how women are participating and deciding and managing water in the future. So girls' education should be focused upon. And at the household level, things like property rights and legal recognition of their contribution should be focused upon. Also, the inclusion of women in government schemes, training programs, and education is going to bring a lot in terms of the gender equality. Another point that I wanted to mention,
Kanika, you need to conclude.
Yes. The last point that I want to mention is about economic empowerment. And here I mean to say that there has to be critical support from the government in terms of increasing livelihood training, microcredit for women and entrepreneurs, and marketing support for them to carry out those activities. With this, Parthada, I would like to conclude. I think I have made most of the points that I wanted to make. And thank you for letting me be a part of this panel.
Thank you, Kankanika. So thanks for bringing in the water quality issue, because there is hardly any data that relates actually water quality to the health of water users, with space, especially for women and children. And also thanks for connecting the need of gender desegregated data for academics, because that's what we do not have, and that's why we do not have assessment of most of the sectors in gender. So thank you very much. I think later on, maybe in next couple of gatherings, we can expand more into the specifics that you have just mentioned. Dr. Veena Khanduri is with us, and she just told me that she has to leave early, so I am bringing her in. Dr. Veena Khanduri is with the India Water Program, and we have been working with her institution for a long time now. So she is also associated in designing and planning the entire program. So Veena, can you come in and give your brief input?
Yes, thank you, Partha. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Partha, and thank you everyone for taking me, because the people whom we are working all are in this platform, and it is a great opportunity to talk about the gender. And I think in my past almost 30 years of my career, I was facing this issue of gender in each and every program. When we talk about the policy, national water policy, I think, Partha, you were already involved in that preliminary discussions when we organized all journal discussions. And from the government side, there was a very different kind of approach for taking the gender aspects into the mainstreaming water policy. And we organized so many programs. We have included so many we have reviewed so many state water policies. And every time we were vouching for the climate change adaptation and the gender mainstreaming. However, the climate change and adaptation part was formally adopted in the National Water Policy 2012 when IWPF submitted. So taking the discourse of today, I just want to highlight the four core issues which you have highlighted, or objectives, and where we have to give our own opinion. The core issues, taking the women's role and contribution to water management. I think water resource management, if we talk sustainable development and gender, both are interlinked. And this was recognized by the global water community as well as during the Inter-Ministerial Conference on Water and Environment, ICWA. And all the practitioners know about this Dublin Principle 3, where it is categorically stated that women play a central part in the provision, management, and safeguarding of water. But this role of women as provider and users and water has seldom been reflected in institutional arrangements for the land and management of water resources. And this was emphasized by many speakers. So when we talk about this role, acceptance and implementation of this principle really required a positive policy to address women's specific needs. And we have to equip and empower women to participate at all levels in water resource program. But how? We have to see the social equity, because when we talk about social equity, it is one of the slated pillars of integrated water resource management, along with economic efficiency and environmental sustainability. And here I want to add that social differences between man and women, they result in gender roles. If we talk about the culture, or we talk about the ethnicity, or the different generations. So that will vary substantially between the cultures. And such gender differences determine the consequences of water policies, directives, and programs. And this leads to difference in the benefit for men as well as women. So therefore, when we talk about advancing the governance and management of water resources at all levels for sustainable and equitable development, we have to see the due consideration should be given to the factors that underline social inequity and gender inequity in particular. So these are the core issues which I would like to highlight. The second thing is, so many people have talked about the gender needs. And I just want to say, and there is a, the word gender and women are often used interchangeably. Though, if you see, they do not mean the same thing. Because while men and women refer to the sexual difference between them, here gender refers in the social difference between men as well as women. And these differences brings governance by the socio-cultural norms in a society. Also, so many people have quoted here that women's participation is not as it is required. I completely agree. So when we talk about transforming gender relations, it is not just about adding women to the existing power structures or in the institutions, but it is also about doing things differently to address the uniqueness that exists in the women's and men needs. Now I come to the second point, that how this women's increased vulnerability of women water related stresses. So if we talk about the context of Assam, I see the biggest climate change impact on women are the work overload, including increased investment of time and double burden due to distress migration of the menfolk. And it has been categorically stated by almost all the panelists. The another impact usually unaddressed is the social impact. And it is including an increase in domestic violence due to deepening poverty. Because of the disaster, because of the drought, ultimately women are in the center. So women concerns and her special needs are also related to water sector. And they are articulated around their domestic roles. And normally what happened, it is subsumed under the motions of household and social equity. So in this process, if you see her own special needs, including her minimal hygiene and sanitation needs and concerns are ignored. So this is one of the most vulnerable example. If we see the scarcity of rainfall, it is increasing the insect and pest and decreasing soil moisture. So it is again increasing the workload on the women. If you see the climate vagary, unpredictable and untimely rains means that women cannot plan their work the way they were planning. So they have to work longer and then they have to face crop failure and poor harvest also. So these are the basically factors which are increasing the vulnerability of women to the water related stress. Now the point 3, you have asked for the recommendations from gender outlook in future water governance. I think in my experience, and as Arpita also said, and Preeti ji also mentioned, and Geeta ji also mentioned, I think, there is a need to work for the enabling environment. and which encourages the participation of all stakeholders. All stakeholders means men and women. I'm not talking only the women, because unless we make an enabling environment, we cannot take national to local levels, and we cannot achieve efficient, equitable and sustainable water management and ensure gender equality and social justice. So enabling environment is a prerequisite. The second point is gender is not specifically integrated in India's water policy, as you know very well. And it is a good news that through Jal Jeevan Mission, there is a guide, in the guidelines, it is clearly mentioned to have the water committees, district level water and sanitation committee, and I am part of one of the committee. But as so many panelists rightly pointed out, that these are the only numbers in terms of the representation. So how to ensure their effective participation, that is the area where we have to work. Second thing is to integrate gender perspective in the project design itself by supporting and promoting inclusion of women stakeholders and elected leaders in the implementation of projects at the field level. So this is one of the very, very major, objectives, that how we can ensure the women's participation, because unless we involve the elected leaders in the implementation of projects, this will be merely a participation. Second thing is action.
Veena, may I request you to be a little bit brief? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just coming to the next point.
Okay.
Second thing is, as you yourself have rightly pointed out, that designing and technical assistance interventions in consultation with women as well as men to ensure that gender-specific needs are identified and addressed. Then document and publicize role models and enhance participation of women and girls in sensitizing men. There are many success stories which we are taking from the field. I have just completed one Safe Water Network entrepreneurship program, and we have come up with a story where women have started the entrepreneurship for the water ATMs. So if you talk about the recommendations, so my recommendation will be, Partha, you know that IWP as a network of national and local partners builds awareness and work as a catalyst for change by providing a neutral platform for exchange of ideas and by generating the evidence-based for informed decision making. And today what we are doing is one of that activity. So for engaging with public and policy makers for promoting and gender sensitive water discourse in the state of Assam, I think we as all stakeholders have to work towards getting, first of all, support. And that support is a high level political commitment. I think that is very, very important, that how we take the high level political commitment. Then we have to help also facilitate state government to translate these commitments into the national policies and action plans. Because not only commitment, but how we can facilitate the state government to translate these commitments into national policy and action plan, that is equally important. Then we have to ensure also that the preconditions are created for national and local actors for implementing commitments to ensure an integrated approach and practical level participation. So I think these are the practical inputs which we have to give. And I feel that through this platform, we can organize different stakeholders meetings. This is one of the very, group where we all are interacting, but we can take the field practitioners, action research people, and the people who are into the policy domain directly. So a different kind of inputs can build the right perspective for taking the Assam water policy. And as our main aim is to have the gender integration, I will just reiterate gender as well as the climate change intervention, because in the Assam water policy, it is not mentioned at all. So with this, thank you so much, Partha, for giving me this an opportunity. And I feel that you have to take this platform. It's a neutral platform. And I think through this platform, we have to organize a similar kind of meetings with the different stakeholders. Thank you so much.
Many things, Veena. I have only two comments. Number one is that, your vast experience for last 30 years that you have acquired by walking on water and specializing on gender issues from all over India, which has been very well reflected in your intervention. There are many, many good points there, and we'll analyze later on. And secondly, my request is that, you as an individual, then IWP as an institution is probably having the advantage of having, better access to policymakers and government officials than many others. And therefore, you have a special duty of and responsibility of taking whatever comes out of this forum and future forums directly to the policymaker, of course, in the form of, very concrete policy recommendation. I hope you will support all of us. Thank you very much. Our last panelist is Dr. Sanchita Barua, and I invite Sanchita to briefly give her comments from her personal experience of working on the Brahmaputra for such a long time. Sanchita.
Thank you, Partha, and thank you so much for inviting me into this August gathering of such experts. So since I probably am the last one, I think almost everything has been covered by each and every panelist. So like gender equality, gender empowerment. And I would just like to add something from my experience from the field. And as Madam Gita and Madam Preeti and Arpita and Madam Veena has already put in. So I would just like to put forward the identification of water assets of village, then water budgeting in panchayat levels, women becoming game changers. So I would just like to elucidate something from field experience, give just some idea to the participants probably what exactly is there in the field. So women has been taken as plays a very significant role, and they are the primary providers, but they're taken as the secondary earners. So as secondary earners, they have used the natural resources, which is relating to water, and they have used it to add to their food security, to their family health, family nutrition, and water management as well. So a few of them are like using it for agriculture, like paddy plantation. They are actively involved in the plantation, the transplantation, the harvesting. Then they go into for vegetable patches in their backyard, and these provide them also with an extra income, which they do not go to the main market, but they go to the local market, which also adds to their family coffer. Then animal husbandry is also another one. But let me come to the fishery part. So in fishery part, there are two aspects. One is the capture fishery and one is the culture fishery. So culture fishery is just coming up right now. And there, except for helping as, providing feed to the ponds, women exactly do not have that much of, role to play in fisheries as well. But in capture fisheries, what they do is that they go to the other, the wetlands, the rivers. They use the basic fishing gear, the local fishing gear, which are very, indigenous fishing gears, which are exclusively, mostly used by women, and they catch those fishes which are termed not only as, we use it as, it is also termed as trash fish, not the major, major fish, which has high price. But these also supplement their protein, their protein requirement as well. And along with that, if you bring in agriculture, after the harvesting of the paddy, the stumping are taken off, and there are fishes out there which are also harvested, which also adds to it. There are paddy ponds which are associated with it, which is used as a drainage to take out the water, which are a part in the deeper part of the of the paddy field, and the water hyacinths are harvested, and even there, fishes are also harvested out there. So these are some role. I'm just supplementing it with some, experience from my field. Then each and every household in the rural area has a weaving unit, which is exclusively run by women, which also supplements. And in tea gardens, there are also the pluckers are mainly about 80-85% of them are female. And also for if you go to Majuli area, there the post flood, the fish are harvested, and there is a lot of fish preservation in any forms, dried fish, pickles, which also form as food for later on. So they are the providers, and they provide for the family. Ultimately, it was seen that during the whole scenario is that education, primary education or education to a family, even though it's provided for free, male child is preferred than a girl child. A boy child is preferred over a girl child. So I think that the education, the right to education and access to education, I think that is what has, not been able to bring women to the forefront. Because once women becomes empowered through education, then she has the, she probably would be able to come up with a decision making. Maybe will have the, be assertive about her rights. Because knowledge will actually give her, and that knowledge will also bring in help and will also, add to water management practices as well. Here, as you had already mentioned, and Madam Veena has already mentioned about the Jal Jeevan Mission. In the Jal Jeevan Mission, which has been implemented in this part, the women folk have been trained to do water testing. They have been going from door to door. And also a lot of IEC activities have been there. And even though they are a part of that, they need to be a part of that committee of the water management. So now if education is brought in, then probably, that management, the water users, the water associations, the end water users, the water governance also will come into a lot of, will be elevated, I would say. Then, sorry, that would also be if you bring in education, the sanitation part, the hygiene, the knowledge about that, that will also increase the health issues as well, bring about the health of the family. And regarding that women not being there in the forefront, I'm also sorry I feel right now, because I happen to be a part of that draft water policy. That was about 15 years. I forgot that it was about 15 years ago now. So it started off from 2007, early 2007, end of 2006 and 2007. So I was part of that. And ultimately we had come up with a kind of document, but that document did not have any gender. Now I'm reflecting on it when Partho just pointed it out to me, and I see that at that time, even I was the only woman out there or female out there in that group, other than the additional chief secretary, who was the convener of the whole policy. So at that time, when I had started, even before that, when I had started off for research in the field, I was probably the only female as well in this field, going to the field and working in this water area. But now I see that a lot of people coming up. So this is what education does. People have been educated, they have come up, they have learned how to assert themselves, and they have to come out from the male domain. Partho, I'm sorry to say that, but it is what you have to come out from that mindset, a typical mindset of being, being a male, or you have to come out from that gender in you, not the female gender or the male of the female sex within you. You have to come out as a gender, as a dominant gender of your sex, maybe. So ultimately, if there is an education, that education will bring about, ultimately management of population. Ultimately, whatever has happened, the sustainability and management of resources, ultimately it boils down to overpopulation. So if education is made mandatory or is made accessible to females, then it will bring about a control in population, which will ultimately bring about sustainable development. So ultimately, I feel that, to include education as a very, very important part in the policy decisions, because the other panelists have already put in the rest, whatever has to be put in. So this is what I feel that I should add. And they should be allowed to, to come out from that social compliance, the societal obligations which they go through. I think they can come up only if they start, if they have the knowledge, if the knowledge base is increased. And I would like to conclude with that, and that's it. So I think women will benefit from from education for, to bring about water management strategies and help in decision making as well.
Thank you very much. Sanchita, you have actually, talked your personal ground level experiences, which is definitely closely related to one or the other way to gender. And especially you have exemplified some of these issues through your observation of women in the fishing community or related to, fish. And fish is one of the most important water-based livelihoods. In fact, most of our traditional vocations and livelihoods are actually water-based livelihoods. I mean, wherever you agriculture, horticulture.
Civilization started up near the water.
Everything. So if we start actually, investigating academically into all these sectors, God knows how many, important and socially important, academically important issues will crop up. So thank you very much. So what also has come out of your discourse is that, as Orbita said, it is not only technology, policy making is also entirely a masculine process. And one of my friends who did excellent study of hydropower sector, exploring what is the role of women in the hydropower sector, they have concluded that hydropower is probably the most masculine development sector because women representation is almost nil. So these are various ways of looking into the gender perspective. It's not only about rural empowerment. There are many other fronts are opening. Thank you very much. Now I'm very sorry that we have actually exceeded time, but still I would request all of you to be patient with us for another 10 minutes because of paucity of time. The last we are into the last leg. And we will now have a dialogue with some of invited discussants. But the proposed interaction with our young boys and girls, we are excluding now. We can't do that now. And we will have another session, to complete what we call to finish the unfinished agenda. But I'm sure they have been enormously benefited by listening to all the panelists and also by listening to what they will now listen to our discussants. So as Bina has also encouraged, and I have also almost made up my mind by this moment that one single discussion probably will not be enough. Although I'm sure that we have received a lot of important inputs from which we can derive very concrete suggestions for policymakers. But we know that there's a lot more to discuss. So therefore, I can definitely promise you that we will reconvene very soon, maybe next month. But in what form or what shape we will see, and with whom. But definitely, we would like all of you to be a part of our future process also, so that the same group grows with ideas and same group can take things to a logical conclusion. So with that, I will now request some of our invited discussants to give their observation, as well as put if they have any questions to the panelists. So may I now have মই ঠিক নাজানো ৰীতা ব্ৰহ্ম তুমি আছা নেকি? Rita, are you there? Because আমাৰ দেৰি হোৱাৰ কাৰণে হয়তো some of our participants have left. Rita, আছা তুমি?
Yes, I'm here.
Good, good. Rita, I am so looking forward to you. Tomar kobologa khini khub common kwa jodi prashno ase prashno koriba. Tumi 2 minutes tomar jodi kotha khini amak kwa.
Okay, thank you so much, Patada, for giving me this opportunity. Actually, today's what we say the program have enriched me so much, and I have come to know that for a woman, everything like water is related. I mean, for a woman, everything is related to water. About education, empowerment, health, hygiene, sanitation, even poverty or increasing the income, cleanliness, issues of productivity, food security, and everything, even personal development. Once I heard from a very respected woman, I think I should name her Wahida Rahman. Like in one of the program in Guwahati, she mentioned that there was a woman who fetched water and fetching water from a hand pump, and that took the whole morning till 12 o'clock, so many hours. And from this, I came to know that having water or having access to water, safe, pure water, will means a lot to women, from earning a livelihood to having education, and for personal development, leisure, looking after her own health, her family, and also the health and hygiene of everyone in the family. So that way, water is what we say, everything is related to women. So when I say about, I wanted to just highlight on livelihood, because we all of us, we are facing and have faced the pandemic, and during the pandemic, I think livelihood was one of the issues, and especially for people living in the shores and the forest fringes where water is very scarce.
Rita, can you conclude? Can you conclude?
Okay. Yes, I will conclude in just 1 minute. So I was thinking that for livelihood, it was good. It is good, and also for health, it is good that every household have a little kitchen garden or a nutrition garden, because during the pandemic, doctors and people advise that we should have vitamin C and protein and all. So if our livelihood, I will not take long, like if our livelihood, especially livestock and agriculture and all these are taken care of with the available water, then I think women can achieve much.
Thank you.
I think I can. Yes, that's all for now. Yes.
Thank you. I'm so sorry to tell all of you that somehow the meeting will automatically close down at 8:30. So we have only 3 minutes. It may, I'm sorry, Pranav is trying to extend it. So if it suddenly goes out, I'm so sorry. I apologize, beforehand. I will invite Dr. Nesima. Nesima, you are there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you?
If you will probably the last. Yeah, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time is very short, but then also thank you, Partha, for inviting me to participate in this serious discussion regarding gender and water. So main important thing is that women play a significant role. I have come to know that mainly in the case of production of food, women are playing such a significant role. And though it is found that in the developing world also, women are accounted for majority of the workforce in agriculture sector. But still, women should play a greater role in managing water, since they have substantial involvements and stake in both domestic and agricultural water use. But still, it is found that from many studies also, we have seen that they are not the sole decision maker. That is, they don't have the leadership. Already this has been discussed. But then also I want to point out something, that since it is mostly found that women's views may differ from those of the men on many matters, both rationality and institutional features, and the involvement of women may add some new ideas and new views on the discussions on water management. So they should get the leadership, and in this way, they might come up with new innovations in the direction to mitigate the climate change hazards in the agricultural sector. And these perspectives would be more relevant, particularly for in our northeastern part of India, where water institutions need substantial strengthening to manage water resources more effectively and help our farming community to double their farm income. And if we can double our farm income, which is the vision of our honorable Prime Minister Modi. And that's why I want to know from the panelists, though there is very little time, that how can women play an inclusive role? So how in the policy making we can give their role in increasing the water use efficiency in agriculture sector? My question was that. Anyway, time is very less. Then also we need to give emphasis on the women leadership also. And mainly in the farming sector, we can go for integrated farming system. This is the basic thing, where in almost all of the rural countryside, we have found that there is a pond and there are some animal and livestock or fisheries are there. And from that, the woman can get a reliable amount of income. So these are the things I want to point out. Though I have a lot of things to say, but as you are telling, Partha, that time is very short.
I'm sorry about, and as I promised, we will have few such occasions where we will probably be able to give you more time. And I want the same group, the same participants to continue for the entire series of webinars. And thank you very much, Nasima. And
as being agriculturalists, we have a lot of points which can increase the income of the farm women, mainly farm sector.
That was very important, the purpose of inviting you, actually.
Yeah, so, thank you for that. Thank you.
I don't know, it's very uncertain now, but I still, I would request Monisha Datta to come and, give her comments. Monisha, you were there? Monisha, you are there? Monisha, you are there? Can I invite now Chitra Rekha Borua, if you are there?
Yeah, good evening, sir. Good evening to all. Adding to Arpita Das's points, I congratulate all the speakers, but I want to add one point to Arpita Das's presentation. So she has said that women are not a homogeneous group. That is very much correct. There are different sections of women, and so far we have discussed discussed and found that most of the time the women in rural areas suffer the most in while managing the water for the household and also for the family economy, because most of the time they are engaged in agriculture and fishing. But we should not we should also take into consideration the women living in slum areas, because we have quite many slums across Guwahati city and also in the small towns of Assam. Although we don't have the big slums like Mumbai, we should we have the slums, so we should also consider their views, because they also face a lot of difficulty while managing their household water. They are mostly engaged in construction labors and household activities, etc. I mean the domestic helps, and also some of them are sex workers. And secondly, my point is that while discussing about the importance of gender perspective in water governance, we should not restrict ourselves to the binary concept of gender, that is only male and female. We should expand ourselves to be more comprehensive, to cover the issues of transgender community, who are also one of the vulnerable community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chitralekha. Thank you very much. And fortunately, Zoom has probably forgot about its limitation. That's good that it's continuing. But anyway, we're not extending it further, actually. And I don't know if we have Mandira Borgohai. Mandira, you are there? Deepima Sharma? Deepima, are you there? Or I don't know, Bobby Nath? Hello? Good. So it has been extended, so to some extent. So Monisha is not there. Then the turn is the turn of Alolika Sinha. Alolika, you are there? Hello? I'm sure just because of overshooting of time, many people have left actually.
No, Alolika madam is here.
So what happened to her?
Bobby madam also here.
Then why they are not responding?
Bobby madam is unmuting herself. So
okay, Bobby, you come first. Bobby, you have any comments, please? You are also in our core group. Where is Bobby?
Bobby ma'am has unmuted herself, but
fine, but she must speak.
Oh, yeah. Maybe some network issues.
Alolika, you are there?
Yes, she's here.
The yes should come from Alolika, huh, Pranav?
Yes.
Alolika?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Of course,
How
just tell me, did you find it interesting?
Yeah, it's very interesting, Parthada. As you know,
yourself. Alolika, you introduce yourself. You tell them about your background.
Yeah, I was just going to do that. Actually, me coming from a background of hardcore ecology and conservation, see, there are disparities of female presence, female participation in the field I work in. There are not many women working in there, not many women present in the decision making process. But it's really an eye opening to see that water, which is one of our basic needs, and uh, which is one of the resources that we cannot do without. There are disparities in an unknown way, I would say. I'm not talking about a policy making or something. I'll tell you an example from a home, or like my mother responsible for cooking, and I tell you a anecdote here. I grew up in a railway quarter. My father was employed with the railways, and we used to have water 3 times a day, water supply. And somehow none of us bothered to get the water at time. It was always untold way. It was my mother's responsibility. And now I realize how much disparity it was. Like, it was always her responsibility, and despite of that, we don't have this gender's presence in all the policy making or the water management, like Dr. Sapnali Gogoi, what she has termed as water managers. Somehow we have always ignored our water managers. And talking about Dr. Arpita Das's comment as hand pump being a masculine structure, it was really an eye-opener. I just wrote down in the chat. It has never occurred to me. And now when I look back in all the rural areas that I have visited or I have worked in, it's always a hand pump out there. And how stressful and how physical labor oriented the work is, it has never really occurred to me. I think attending the webinar has really changed my way of thinking about it. And thank you for inviting me, Parthada. I was nowhere related to this.
Good to see that. Actually, we have actually baptized quite a lot of people into gender discourse. Sapnali, Alolika, and to some extent Sansita also. I'm sure all those 20-25 young boys and girls, they will also they have also been impacted by this discussion. And definitely we will keep on walking with them on several future occasions. They will be walking with us. I'm sure in your respective documentation of rivers and riverine landscapes, based on whatever you have heard today, you will engage more with appropriate literature. You'll get more information, and finally you'll be able to give us some gender outlook into your reports. So I would still look forward to whoever we have, Bobby Nath or Mandira Guhai or Monika Dutta. Anybody is there? Or otherwise, who is there?
I think the host needs to unmute. When you were calling my name, I was not able to unmute myself. I think it was Pranab who facilitated. So
Pranab, you unmute.
Achha, okay.
Pranab, have you unmuted everybody?
Okay.
You unmute
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Pranab, I was not able to participate because I was muted by the organizing team.
Okay.
Athoda, I am going to call it a night. It is 3 a.m.
Of course.
here.
Thank you very much. And
thank you. And it's been a good discussion and hope to continue in further.
Good that you have remained awake throughout the midnight. And, this is, I'm considering this as your dutiful responsibility towards your country and towards your motherland. So that's,
I mean, I think I've passed the test very well.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. So we are actually now concluding. I have nothing else to add. I have intermittently, giving my remarks. So just one big thank you to all of you, and just a promise that we will walk the journey. We just started the journey. We'll walk the journey together. Maybe in next, 3 to 4 months, we will meet maybe 2 to 3 times. And as I have already, I was trying to write a message in the chat box. It's no longer taking it. But let me tell you, we would like to work with the same group, and the group will grow slowly. So that we can evolve together with the entire process and culminate getting all major issues to the table of at the highest to the people who are at the highest echelon of power, politicians and bureaucrats and technocrats. Thank you very much. I would now request Pranab to very, very briefly offer a vote of thanks.
Okay. Respected Madam and Sir, a very good evening to you all. On behalf of the convener as well as whole organizing team, I feel extremely privileged and great pleasure for me to deliver a vote of thanks for the session to all the dignitaries present here. First and foremost, it is our special thanks to Mrs. Gitarani Bhattacharya Madam for her contribution to the executing the session and for her resourceful speech. And we are grateful to all the panelists who led the discussion to a significant level with insightful analysis of various issues on the subject. We'd like to mention the names: Priti Madam, Dr. Arpita Das Madam, Ms. Kankana Nehok Madam, Dr. Sapnali Gogoi Madam, Dr. Sanchita Bura Madam, Dr. Bina Kanduri Madam. It's an immense pleasure to listening you all today. And we are expressing our heartfelt thanks to all the discussants for highlighting various important aspects relevant to gender and water governance and making this session effective and rich. Our special gratitude to India Water Partnership, a renowned organization of India working in the sector of water and security, for collaborating with Aaranyak in the session. And we convey our sincere thanks to Dr. Parthajyoti Das sir for planning the entire session and moderating it in an attractive way. And we are also thankful to Alalika Sinha Madam for anchoring the introduction session of the panelists. As well as we would like to express our thanks to all the participants from River Documentation Group, Youth Action Brahmaputra Group, and Oxfam India Group. Last but not the least, we are special acknowledgement to all the group members of the organizing team. Thank you very much.
So thanks a lot, gentlemen. We will keep in touch. We will keep in touch, and we will very soon we will come out with a report out of this discussion. We'll share with you. You will get another round of opportunity to especially panelists and discussants to add besides to what you have already said. Thank you very much. A very good night, and we all hope that very soon we will have we hope that we can make our advocacy for a good water policy of the state and for improved governance of water in the state stronger and stronger with support from all of you. Very soon we will have a good water policy because, you know, the 2022 National Water Policy is about to be published very soon. It will be put in public domain for some time, and there will be an occasion and opportunity for all of us to give comments. And right after that, you know, there will be a I hope that there will be pressure on state governments to come up with their, you know, own state level policies. So by that time, we will be actually prepared to give our input. So this is quite a good time to discuss this. Not only on gender, there are other aspects also we will take up slowly one after another. So thank you very much. Sorry for keeping you engaged for a longer time, you know, beyond 8 o'clock, but then, you know, it happens. But it ends the discussion also, you know. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good night.